There was a woman named Emily. She wasn't born into wealth or luxury. She lived in a small, run-down apartment in the city. Her life was simple, filled with daily struggles. Emily worked long hours as a waitress in a local diner. Every day, she put on a smile, no matter how tired or discouraged she felt. Her clothes were old, and her shoes were worn out. But Emily had dreams. She dreamed of something bigger, something better. She didn't want to be stuck in this life forever. She wanted to build something of her own, to rise above the life that others had labeled her with. But the world wasn't kind to people like her. People looked at her and saw only a poor, struggling woman. They didn't see her ambition. They didn't see her drive. They only saw her as someone who didn't matter. Yet Emily kept going. She couldn't let the opinions of others stop her. She didn't have much, but she had hope, and that was enough. Every night after her shift, she would sit at her tiny kitchen table, working on her ideas. She read books, watched tutorials, and slowly, little by little, she started building a plan for a future that was different from her current life. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew it might take years. But deep down, Emily believed she could make it. No one else believed in her, but she believed in herself. One afternoon, Emily's life took an unexpected turn. She was working her usual shift at the diner when a man walked in. He was tall, sharply dressed, in a designer suit, and wore a confident smile. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Emily, he raised an eyebrow. "One of those days," he muttered to himself before sitting down at the counter. Emily, always professional, went over to take his order. She greeted him with a smile, despite the fact that her feet ached from the long hours. "What can I get you, sir?" she asked politely. The man looked her over, taking in her worn-out uniform and tired expression. "I'll have a coffee," he said, his voice cold and distant. "But you might want to do something about your clothes. They're not very impressive." Emily paused for a moment, surprised by his bluntness, but she quickly recovered, knowing it wasn't worth reacting. She nodded and walked away to prepare his coffee. As she served him his drink, the man looked at her with a condescending smile. "You know, people like you are everywhere. No ambition, no drive, just stuck in the same place, day after day. It's a shame, really. You're just trash." The words hit her like a slap to the face. She stood frozen for a moment, the sting of the insult sinking in. He was talking to her like she was nothing, like she was less than human. But Emily didn't let her emotions show. She forced a smile, nodded, and walked away, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. His words echoed in her mind all night. Trash. That word repeated over and over again, cutting deeper with every thought. But instead of feeling defeated, something inside her sparked. Emily couldn't explain it, but she felt a fire inside her. This man, this rich, arrogant man, had no idea who she was. He had no idea what she was capable of, and that was going to change. That night, after her shift, Emily couldn't shake the man's words from her mind. She tried to focus on her goals, but every time she closed her eyes, the word trash echoed in her head. It felt like a weight, dragging her down. She had always known life wasn't easy, but now it felt even harder. She had worked so many hours, saved every penny, and yet, in one sentence, a stranger had made her feel worthless. It wasn't just the insult, it was how true it felt in the moment. But instead of letting the pain hold her back, Emily decided to use it. She wouldn't let those words define her. She was better than that. She was going to prove that rich man wrong, no matter what it took. Emily sat down at her kitchen table, her usual spot, where she thought and planned. She opened her laptop and started researching. She researched successful people, how they started, the obstacles they faced, and how they overcame them. It was overwhelming, but it was also motivating. She realized that nothing would come easy, and success wouldn't happen overnight. She had to be smart, persistent, and work harder than she ever had before. Emily knew she couldn't let herself fall into despair. If she wanted to change her life, she had to start somewhere. It was time to put her plan into action. She wasn't going to let a single insult stop her. She would rise. She would show the world what she was made of. Months went by, and Emily worked tirelessly to change her life. She spent every spare moment learning. She took online courses, read business books, and watched countless videos on how to start a successful business. At first, it all seemed overwhelming. There was so much to learn and so many obstacles to face. But Emily didn't back down. She knew she had to start small. She started by offering freelance services online, using the skills she'd picked up. It wasn't much at first, just small projects, low pay, and long hours. But with each job, Emily got better. She built her confidence and learned the ins and outs of the business world. There were days when she wanted to quit. There were moments when the weight of it all felt too much to carry. But every time she thought about giving up, the words of that rich man came back to her. Trash. No, she wasn't trash. She was someone who would make it. And so, she pushed through. One day, she got a big break. A well-known company reached out to her for a major project. It wasn't easy, but Emily was ready. She worked day and night, pouring everything she had into the project. When it was finished, it was perfect. The company was thrilled, and they offered her more work. That was the moment everything started to shift. The small jobs became bigger ones, and soon, Emily was able to expand her business. She hired a team, and the company grew faster than she ever expected. But Emily didn't forget where she came from. Every success was a reminder of how far she had come. From that small diner, struggling to make ends meet, to building a business that was starting to thrive. The turning point was clear. Emily was no longer just surviving. She was building her future. As Emily's business continued to grow, so did her confidence. She had started with nothing. But now she was running a successful company. Her hard work was finally paying off. She made smart investments, and every decision she made pushed her closer to her goal. The projects she took on became more important, and the people she worked with began to take notice of her abilities. Emily didn't just want to make money, she wanted to build something meaningful. She wanted to create a brand that would stand the test of time. Slowly, she became known in her industry. People started to approach her for advice, and soon, she was being invited to speak at conferences and events. Emily had gone from being a struggling waitress to a respected business owner in just a few years. Her company's success was no longer a dream, it was a reality. Emily had become a millionaire. But she didn't stop there. She knew that in order to keep growing, she had to take risks. She invested in new technologies, expanded her team, and opened new offices in different cities. The company became a powerhouse in its field, and Emily's name was now associated with innovation and success. Despite the success, Emily remained grounded. She remembered the late nights of studying, the failures, and the days when she thought she would never make it. And of course, she remembered the man who had called her trash. But Emily had long moved past those words. She was now in control of her future, and nothing was going to stop her. She was no longer just trying to survive, she was thriving. She had built something real, something lasting. And with each new success, her belief in herself grew stronger. Emily had proven that with enough drive and determination, anything was possible. She wasn't just a woman who worked at a diner anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. Years passed, and Emily's company reached new heights. She was now a billionaire, and her name was known across the business world. She had everything she had ever dreamed of: luxury, success, and respect. But there was one thing she hadn't expected. Fate had a way of bringing people back into her life when she least expected it. One day, as Emily was leaving her office building, she saw him. The rich man from the diner. He was standing outside, nervously looking around. Emily recognized him immediately. He looked different. His expensive suit was slightly worn, and his posture was less confident than before. He didn't notice her at first, but as he stepped forward, their eyes met. The moment was heavy with silence. The man's expression changed as he recognized her too. It's you, he said, his voice filled with surprise. Emily remained calm, keeping her emotions in check. She didn't want to show any anger or resentment. Instead, she gave him a polite smile. "You remember me," she said, her voice steady. "Of course you do." The rich man looked nervous now. He shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to act. Emily noticed how different he seemed from the arrogant, dismissive man she had met years ago. I've fallen on hard times," he admitted, looking down. "I heard about your success. I was hoping you could help me. I made some bad investments and now I'm in debt." Emily stood there for a moment, taking in his words. He was no longer the powerful, wealthy man who had belittled her. Now, he was the one asking for help. He looked vulnerable. humbled by his own mistakes. But Emily didn't feel sorry for him. She had worked too hard for her success. She had overcome every obstacle, every insult, and every setback. She wasn't going to help someone who had once treated her like dirt. "I'm sorry," Emily said softly, "but I don't think I can help you." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, speechless. The rich man had wanted to use her, but Emily wasn't the same woman she once was. She had earned her place, and no one could take that from her. As Emily walked away, a sense of calm washed over her. The encounter with the rich man had been inevitable, but it didn't affect her the way it might have once done. She wasn't angry or bitter, she was just indifferent. Her life had moved far beyond that moment in the diner. She had proven herself in ways that mattered. She had built a billion-dollar company, and she had done it all on her own terms. The man who had called her trash all those years ago no longer had a place in her life. But as she looked back one last time, she saw him standing there, his shoulders slumped in defeat. It was a sad sight, really. He had been so certain of his superiority, so confident in his wealth and power. And now, here he was, relying on someone he had once insulted to help him out of his own mess. Emily didn't feel a rush of satisfaction, though. There was no sense of triumph in seeing him fall. Instead, she just felt a quiet realization. He hadn't been the real obstacle in her life. It was never about him, it was about herself. She had proven to herself that she was capable of more than anyone had ever believed. That was the real victory. As Emily got into her car and drove away, she couldn't help but smile. The world had underestimated her, but she had risen above it all. And in the end, that was all that mattered.